Welcome to Rise from Lausanne, Switzerland, where the Federal Council is scheduled to announce the lifting of major restrictions this coming Wednesday, and where my university begins in-person classroom teaching this coming Monday. I am Professor Demian Hodari of VHL Hospitality Business School, Lausanne.
And from very hot and sunny and Protea beautiful Cape Town, a very warm, loving how's it? And thank you for joining us on Rise. And to everyone, a very, very happy Hearts Day. We hope that you have a huge amount of love and a huge amount of chocolate going on wherever you are in the world. Thank you for joining us. We're incredibly grateful to have you on our dedicated Rise platform on Facebook, on LinkedIn Live, on YouTube Live. Thank you for being with us as we all together continue to support and keep inspired about an industry that we all love. Now, importantly, this industry is one that has gone through a long stretch, and we're so grateful you've been with us on Rise. We are in day 665 of our 100-day labor of love, and we are counting down 2 months to our second anniversary, Professor Hodari. Today on Rise, it's all about love. Tell me, because I know this is a very special episode for your heart, Professor, what's happening today?
Well, first, I can see that you got the flowers I sent behind you, so I'm happy that you received those. Look, besides our great speaker today, we've got 2 reports from some of our Intel partners about issues that are going on in terms of the financial industry career-wise, and also, as always, an STR report from co-stars Jan Freitag regarding hotel performance around the world. 2 pieces of information I think our viewers will absolutely benefit from. But before we get to any of them, let's get to our viewers themselves with today's poll question. So, would you consider a Zoom wedding? Yes, already did it. Yes, would consider it. No, would rather wait. All right, we'll get to those results in a little while. First, over to you, Anita.
Indeed. And just for clarity on anyone asking about that poll, a Zoom wedding is not like you, Professor Hodari, show up, say yes, and disappear out of the church. It's actually doing it on the Zoom platform or whatever it might be. So where in the world are we? We wanted to look at, as always, what we feel you need to know. And this one I've done a little bit of a twist on, because I'm going to share with you some statistics that were recently shared by CLIA, the International Cruise Association. We had the great pleasure of having Kelly Craighead, the CEO, on as one of our executives in residence. They recently released their State of the Industry report. And I share this with you all for one reason. Importantly, it's not just what you need to know in terms of going forward in the travel and tourism and hospitality industry. It's knowing how we need to say it. And what I love about this report is that whether you're in the cruise sector or not, I strongly encourage Googling 2022 State of the Cruise Industry Report, CLIA, because they are superb in how they communicate why our industry is indeed essential. We've all learned during the pandemic that we need to talk not about holidays, not about leisure, not about the beauty of travel and tourism, but the essential nature of it when it comes to job creation, investment attraction, keeping lives and livelihoods strong. So I thought this was a great example to share of not just the current statistics of the importance of the cruise industry, but how one industry is doing it right when it comes to communicating the essential nature of their statistics to make sure our industry recovers with strength. On top of that, we're going to now segue into a little bit of a spin, and we're delighted to have our next Intel partner with us, which is Ethos Consulting Group. Now, they are a specialist when it comes to recruitment and performance management, and they've been very, very important in terms of being able to talk about how all of us rewired from our work from anywhere lifestyles during the pandemic are going to, whether you're an employer or an employee, rethink the psychometrics about making that right connection to make the future of work stronger. So we're delighted to have Ethos with us today, and we have their fresh Intel contribution. Please.
Most industry executives will associate Ethos with the firm's recruitment services, yet they have a well-established talent and performance management division focused on psychometric assessments, leadership, coaching, and organizational alignment. They have shared here an example which illustrates how psychometric profiling can be used to assess individuals. highly relevant in today's employment market. Based on data collected since before the 2000s, they have created an aggregate success profile of a hospitality chief financial officer, shown on the right. The chart will need professional analysis by Athos's team, but broadly speaking, it displays CFOs are structured and process-driven in their thinking, rule-conscious, and placing value on transparency in communication. Notwithstanding that, they are not overly rigid in their thinking, appreciating that special circumstances require out-of-the-box thinking. They are very much thinking in terms of risk and rewards, hardworking and hands-on doers with strong task orientation. This is coupled with strong analytical skills, detail orientation, and a very switched-on mentality. When it comes to team management and leadership, they seem to prefer lean and efficient setups centered around competency centers and flat hierarchy levels, which facilitates quick decision-making as well as transparency of information. They can be hands-on if and when needed, but broadly speaking, expect their teams and colleagues to be proficient, self-driven, and autonomous. Empowerment, control, pragmatism, and transparency are thus key to the way they operate. Thomas, who is Athos's MD for EMEA, has pointed out many more nuances of this profile. For example, he highlighted that, in what is likely to be a reflection of the current turbulent times, CFOs are presently much more focused on tactics and achieving goals in the here and now, with strategy taking a backseat. He would expect this to correct itself over time. He also mentioned that such profiles can be prepared specifically for an organization's leadership team to then use the information obtained to develop individual professional development plans for the executives on the leadership team, prepare benchmark profiles that provide information on what makes a person successful specifically within that organization's company culture, and prepare the team's aggregate profile to benchmark and assess job applicants or internal promotion candidates.
Yeah, Anita, I think it's a lot of information there for me to digest, but what I think is really interesting, especially for students or young professionals, is you may want a career in finance, but so many other skills are necessary to really be successful. And probably the numbers is not the most challenging part to advance. It's the social and other skills that people need. And I always try to point it out to students. It's not just the academic part, it's the whole part of who you are. And I think this was a good representation of that.
It's a great comment. I'm just going to build on that a little bit, Professor, because to your point, by being thrown into the virtual world, by being disconnected from offices, classrooms, whatever it might be, people have been forced to expose their soft skills, which are often taken for granted in those environments, and how people have coped in adapting their soft skills or having their soft skill channel cut off. It's interesting to see how recruiters and performance managers are now looking at that in terms of re-engaging with the world. Do people have the grit required, not just, as you say, the professional credentials? It's a really interesting new world of work consideration.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up. I found something interesting the other day. A former student of mine was applying for a job, and he was willing to go to have an in-person interview, which was allowed. And they said, no, we're only doing them online now because we think that's the future. We need to see how well you can handle yourself online. And so that was really interesting, I think. So gave him a mock interview. Okay, changing gears. Up and away. US average daily rate growth, 22%, right? This is an incredible number, but look how much of that is eaten away by inflation. Still positive growth. Look over here in Germany, 5% inflation, right? Eating away at all the ADR growth. This is from our friends at Jones Lang LaSalle. And the point just being, be careful with the way you're interpreting announcements this year of hotel performance for last year and projections for this year. For the first time in a very long time, we need to account for substantial inflation. And so most reports and companies will, acknowledge that, but not everybody. So pay attention to the inflation taking place in the markets that you're looking at.
Great point.
All right, and for more on hotel performance and probably a little bit of inflation analysis, we turn to my good friend, Jan Freitag. Jan, take it away.
Hello, Rise. Hi, Anita. Hello, Professor. Thanks for having me back. I appreciate the opportunity to share with you a couple of the data points that are part of the conversation as 2022 starts out. To begin with, we're looking at the difference in room rates for weekends versus weekdays. And traditionally, as you can see in the United States, weekend room rates were always, like $1 to $5 or so higher than during the weekdays. Not a big surprise, right? Because the leisure traveler pays what's called best available rate, the bar rate, and there's nothing negotiated in it. During 2021, that difference has skyrocketed, and you're seeing that weekend room rates are now between $5 and almost $30 higher than they were during weekdays, speaking to the very, very strong demand from the American leisure consumer. So there's a little bit of pricing power there. And then the question is, does that fall to the bottom line? Unfortunately, on the second slide I'm showing you here, we're looking at global profitability. The STR team just released the global data for 2021. And what you're seeing here are a couple of things. So first of all, what we're doing here is we're indexing compared to 2019. So we're asking, is TRevPAR, total revenue per available room, what percentage of 2019 have we achieved? And you see that number is between 50 and 70% or so, a little bit higher in the Middle East because of Expo. And then the question is GOP per available room compared to 2019, what ratio have we achieved? And that's really the number that will be giving a lot of us heartburn and will focus our attention, because the profitability compared to 2019 is only, in Asia, 30% of what it was in 2019. So there will be a lot of time and energy and resources spent in trying to increase that ratio and get back to 2019 profitability levels. That's going to be an uphill battle. We are in the middle of a recovery, but it's going to be quite a while until we see the profitability increase, especially as labor costs continue to ramp up. I'm sure you will cover this as well in your future RISE session. Until next time, thanks so much for having me. Have a great day.
I'm always impressed with not only the data that CoStar has, but the way that especially Jan can just make sense of it, figure out what really matters to people and make it very clear. That's why I always love when he gets involved with my students as well.
You're absolutely right. And thank you for bringing him on as an Intel partner, because I think what you're saying, Professor, and it's very much what you also did with your slide, it's making sense of the data. There's so much excitement about all this pent-up demand, all the travel starting again. Your ability to help people interpret it correctly and proceed with caution in their understanding is really important. And Jan is just, he's a sweetie, but it's great that he does that. And his commitment to RISE is quite unique, and especially the freshness of intel that he brings. So we've got a good partnership, and you two are a great combination. Shall I say you're a great couple on this Valentine's Day?
I was going to say, I may have brought him to RISE, but you're the one who keeps him here by calling him sweetie every 2 weeks. All right, we got a couple of headlines for you. I got a shocker. The restaurant business will probably never recover from COVID, right? When you see something like this on CNN, right, you're wondering, what could they possibly know to say it will never recover again, right? And I looked up the definition of recover, Anita, and it was a return to the normal state. Well, no one is ever saying we're going to return to the normal state, right? And we all accept that, but we'll never recover. It's a dramatic statement, right? It's this shock value. And 2 years into the pandemic, personally, I'd like us to tone things down a little bit and be realistic and not set false expectations, nor positive nor negative, right? What's going on in the restaurant industry? We're having trouble finding employees. There are new competitors or frenemies from delivery. There are supply chain issues, new consumer behavior patterns. We're working from home. We're not eating lunch out as often. These are just changes in the environment, in the world, that industry and firms need to respond to. This, by the way, is the course that I teach. This is normal. There is always change. And sure, there's been a lot of change, and some of it is powerful. But we've been through big changes before, not just the last 2 years, but the last 20 years and the last 50 years. And so it's time to realize that this is where we start to see more successful firms, firms with better strategy, firms with more access to money or to good people, perhaps survive a little bit better. And where does that resource, where does that ability come from? It comes from leadership. It comes from people being able to see the changes that are necessary. It doesn't always take a huge amount of money to do these things. So a big point. This is normal that the world is changing. This is normal that industry and firms have to change. We don't need headlines. These shockers the industry will never recover from COVID.
It's a great example. And it's a reason why we've said from the beginning of Rise, it's about the next normal, knowing that they're going to be phases. I think your point is really important, and this is a good reflection of it, which we do as people in the industry, which the media does across the media landscape, which all of us do. It's generalizations. And that's a dangerous thing. As we've said, there are parts of the world that are opening up very confidently. There are parts that are shutting down. There are parts of the industry opening up. There are parts that are still very cautious. It's the generalizations. And especially all of us in the industry as practitioners need to be very careful, because our words have weight. And that weight can have an impact, and we need to be very cautious of that. So great example, again, of not just what we communicate, but how we communicate it. So thank you for that, Professor. So on to my headline. Now, I stuck in the theme of love and romance, and I thought this was absolutely brilliant, because I, as an Indian daughter, can absolutely relate to the power of the Indian wedding industry. Now, Can You Marry Me Now, obviously, is a pandemic time twist on Can You Hear Me Now? And I thought this was brilliant, how the pandemic brings more takers for the great Indian hybrid wedding. Now, some statistics for context. The Indian wedding industry was always existed as a part of the nation's economy, was one of the clips that I took from. 2018, KPMG reported that the industry was worth $50 billion US, with an annual growth rate of over 25 and 30%. Granted, the Indian population is relatively young, with half the country under the age of 30, but more than 12 million weddings are held annually. Now, for anyone who's gone to an Indian wedding, it's not a one afternoon, one evening, one event. It's 4 to 5 days of events. And by the time you get to the actual wedding ceremony itself, you're overfed, overdanced, underslept, and everything's just magnificent. And I thought this was interesting, that from the point of view of taking that experience away from Indian brides and grooms, and more importantly, the parents of Indian brides and grooms, that was an issue. So this that's come out is that we have hybrid weddings, and consulting firms are making it happen so that people halfway across the world that can't travel to these incredible events can still share in it. Brilliant innovation. Pandemic is becoming a synonym for innovation. And as always, there is no price limit on love. So I thought this was great, and it fits into our session with our executive in residence. In terms of my video choice, links to this as well. As if dating and finding the perfect match wasn't hard enough, Professor, now we've got a whole new set of criteria. Please.
On this hot Friday night, the dating scene is alive. Restaurants are packed. Popular date spot, Barbunya, fully booked. And forget about tall, dark, and handsome. Being vaccinated is this summer's top dating criteria. In fact, according to dating website OkCupid, users who are saying yes to being vaccinated are receiving 20% more likes on their dating profile. Shep?
Another incentive. Seema Modi, thank you.
Scary.
You find the strangest videos.
Brilliant. And so now we move on, sir.
Yep, and let's get back to our audience with the results from their poll. Are they willing to have a Zoom wedding? Are they holding out for an in-person wedding, or not getting married? Let's see. Okay, I'm surprised that anybody would be considering it. Is anybody that in such a rush to get married that they're willing to do that rather than wait for the in-person one? I guess so. I'm a little surprised.
I think it all depends on as well when they got engaged, because it could be that it was prior to the pandemic, whatever it might be, and it goes back to the motivation of marriage. I also think that it comes down to this current climate, and I was speaking to someone about this yesterday, funnily enough. It actually has allowed people to get away from all of the drama of the guest list, by saying that, no, we're going to keep it small according to restrictions, or we're going to do it on a Zoom. It's an interesting one, but such is the world of weddings, and why we have the perfect executive in residence for this special Valentine's Day episode of Rise. It is my great pleasure to welcome to the Rise stage one of my absolutely loved colleagues and friends, someone I know for many years and who I've had the pleasure of seeing huggably as well as virtually over the last 2 years. He is someone who is trusted by travelers and, quite honestly, couples and potential wedding people when it comes to creating the holiday of a lifetime. It's VIKRAM MADHOK. He's the managing director of Abercrombie & Kent, otherwise known as A&K. A&K, as we know, is a pioneer when it comes to luxury adventure, having started it almost 60 years ago with the beautiful Sir Geoffrey Kent. Today, they're one of the world's leaders in luxury travel, offering award-winning combination of exclusivity, comfort, and authenticity across 7 continents, and yes, 7, including Antarctica. India is one of the leading dream destinations in the world, especially Rajasthan, and especially for destination weddings. So who better to give us the backstory on what it's all about when it comes to destination weddings, especially as we've seen with our poll, a lot of people are waiting to do it live, and they're channeling that unspent travel money from the last 2 years right there to make it happen. Mr. MADHOK, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Anita. It's always a pleasure to come back to one of the shows that you put together. I didn't send you flowers, though Demian stole a march on me. Next time, I must make sure, if it happens to be on Valentine's Day, I will send you flowers. So now,
that's the important thing.
Yeah. So there's so much talk about weddings and destination weddings, and I'm going to make a few bold statements here, because there are weddings and then there are big fat Indian weddings. There's a whole difference between the two. You touched upon it when you said that a wedding in India is not just a one-day affair or a 2-day affair. It actually can last up to 2 weeks. A destination wedding can actually last up to 3 or 4 nights. It all depends on what the couple wants, etc., etc. But back to you, Anita.
Professor, over to you, sir.
I was gonna say, I feel like my wedding has lasted 18 years at some time, so I may have a world record there. Look, I've got a 2-part question. The first is, let's just take it one part. From this last 2 years, from this pandemic, the way weddings have had to adapt, what will still be part of big destination weddings 5 years from now? Imagine in a post-pandemic world, have we learned anything? Has anything gotten better that we're going to be able to include in these kind of weddings, or has nothing really helped and we want to go back to the way things were?
It's a very good question. I wish I had a crystal ball to gaze into and give you a complete answer, but I can hazard a guess. Today, the pandemic has taught us life is extremely precious and we don't want to waste any time. And yet we want to be very flexible. So when it comes to weddings and it comes to destination weddings, people plan weddings way up in advance. I mean, up till now, prior to the pandemic, if somebody wanted to host a destination wedding, they would actually plan up to a year in advance. They would go, perhaps the couple would have gone on a trip, enjoyed a destination, and then they said they want to bring back and tie the knot in that particular destination. All that has changed now, because at least with the way the pandemic has taught us, you don't have lead times of a year. You maybe don't have lead times of 6 months or 3 months, because you don't know at what stage what happens with the pandemic. So I'm trying to really answer your question here, is that people who perhaps, Anita, in her preamble spoke about how people, the Zoom weddings, and I think that was a question on your that you put out to the public. But a Zoom wedding would perhaps only be in consideration if somebody had got engaged prior to the pandemic. and they couldn't wait any longer, and they didn't want to know how, didn't want to bail it out till the end of the pandemic. But I actually was invited to 2 weddings prior to the pandemic in January. Actually, the invitations sent out were in November, December of 19 for March, April, and May of 2020. Of course, all that got canceled, and then they kind of redid the dates. And then the second wave hit us again, and they canceled the wedding again. So with the result, the couple just had the friends and family very small, and they tied the knot. What's going to happen a few years from today? I can hazard a guess. I think weddings will be a little more tighter. There'll be a shorter duration on terms of time, on terms of planning. They will perhaps be a little more elaborate for the functions that they have, and so on and so forth. But I don't know if I've answered your question, or if I've crystal ball gazed enough.
No, I think that was very helpful. Anita?
Interesting, VIKRAM, you say that, because it's almost as if Mother Nature has tamed people's expectations to be present. And it's the, government has stepped in and said, you can only have 20 people, you can only have 30 people. So people are forgiving now when they're not on the guest list. But I want to go and build on that a little bit, because when I was a little girl growing up, a Sangeet, the music party of the wedding, for those that are not Indian wedding followers, used to be a bunch of girls getting together, getting their mehndi done, their henna done, and it was small and intimate. And then when Elle and I were traveling in India, and you kindly invited us to a Sangeet, I had that in my head. Thank goodness Elle did a check on who the host was of the Sangeet and what a Sangeet is, because we at least had a chance to get the proper clothing to make it happen. Because the scale of it was a good 600-700 people, full on stage performances, dry ice, the Bhangra dancing, the whole bit, which means that there have been changes in the segment itself. Have you noticed any changes in requests since the beginning of the pandemic, when people now start planning destination weddings?
Okay, excellent question. Firstly, to take you back in time, when you came, you actually happened to join us at one of India's biggest designers' daughter's destination, the wedding in the city, and the Sangeet was the precursor for the wedding. I wish you'd stayed for the wedding, but obviously, being a designer of India, he had the most fanciest of clothing, and all the guests were wearing very, very fancy clothes. Now, I've actually now, in the last 2 years, attended maybe 3 weddings, 4, and one of them was a destination wedding. Now, all that has changed is maybe the guest list is a little smaller, but the revelry continues the same way, the parties continue the same way, the planning continues the same way. You perhaps don't have artists coming from all over the world to perform because of the pandemic restrictions. But prior to the pandemic and now going forward, by the way, India officially opens its doors to all vaccinated people as of today. So it's a big day for us in India. We officially will be welcoming people to come and travel to India. If you are double vaccinated, no RT-PCR is required, no quarantine is required, so on and so forth. So there are going to be lots of changes, Anita. But to try and answer your question, I think things are going to be back to normal, with the new normal, perhaps a little bit, but you'll still have big fat Indian weddings. They may not be as big and fat as they were prior, but they certainly will remain big and fat, because that's the Indian psychic. I mean, as parents, I know my son got married, and we had a destination wedding, we had a wedding in the city, we had people going. I took a barat, which is the procession of 250 people for a destination wedding, and then the girl's side, that is my son's, who he married, they had 650 people. So, this is the scale. Similarly, when people now are doing weddings in India, the last wedding I attended, believe it or not, again was in Jaipur, 2,500 people, just after the second wave of the pandemic, before the third wave hit us. So I'm not saying that all weddings are going to remain this way. There certainly will be changes. There's going to be the new protocol that's going to be adopted. Yes, hotels are a lot more careful now, especially with the new protocol of being vaccinated and so on and so forth. Also, some parts of what they would allow prior have now changed. You mentioned Rajasthan. Rajasthan is one of the ultimate wedding destinations in India, just by the setting that they offer. Beautiful palaces, beautiful forts, opulence, and so on and so forth.
I have a question. If I can just build on that, to your point, some people have chosen to go ahead and do a Zoom wedding, and they've had the ceremony. Are you finding that those people are actually breaking up we'll do the wedding, and then we'll do the big reception party later, and using that as an opportunity for destination travel? Are you seeing that so that everyone can still have fun just at a later point in time?
Yes. So there's a destination wedding coming up next weekend, and because they're limited in size in terms of what they didn't know what Omicron, the way it would go, they invited only 50 couples for the destination wedding, but they come back to Delhi and they're going to have 500 people at the party, so that they don't feel that their friends and family and close ones miss out on the wedding. So yes, there's certain changes that will now be adopted, where you'll have it in two parts, where you have a smaller destination wedding and then come back for the big celebration in Delhi, or have a Sangeet, as you called it, in Delhi, and then the couple goes with their close friends and family to get married in a smaller locale or a destination.
Interesting.
I got a slightly different question. Maybe we touched on it a little bit. Is in terms of the way people's views of weddings is changing, these destinations. Are you noticing an increased concern for sustainability and social awareness in the weddings going forward because of the pandemic? Has that always been a trend, or is that not influencing it? Do you have any examples of how weddings are changing as a result?
I think a few people. It's a great question, because we hear about being socially responsible, the elements of not really wanting to be doing things that are not environmentally correct. So I alluded to that, because in my we used to do big fireworks earlier. That has now been stopped because of the pollution and also the sheer waste of money, or burning firecrackers over the Lake Pichola and Udaipur, for example. Anita, you've been there, you can understand what I'm talking about, because every other night on the Lake Pichola, you'd have thousands of dollars worth of fireworks that would go up. Not only would it pollute, but it'll also be sure abuse of money and not being socially responsible. So yes, a lot of people are now moving towards more socially responsible destinations. So they choose a hotel that is perhaps a little bit more socially responsible. And they would maybe, again, go into places where there are national parks and scale down the actual wedding ceremony, but have the big party back in Delhi, which is in a meeting facility or a banquet hall. There is no issues there. But yes, they are doing that. Also, because for lack of flights with the pandemic, now even today, we still have, especially outbound from India, because we have bubble flights. Bubble flights are reciprocity arrangements with countries. So for example, with the UK or the US, we only have certain flights that you can fly. So a lot of people are now reconsidering these destination weddings where their availability is also less. So hence, yes, you are right. People are now getting far more socially responsible. Also, parents are saying, why should we expend all this amount of money on weddings? It is actually a colossal waste. Might as well give the money to the young couple and let them start out in life. Well, if they already started out in life, it can be a fillip. So as against spending so much money on a wedding, this socially responsible is creeping into their minds. So there are multiple things that are going to happen, Anita, Demian, which is now as we move forward, whether people say, my goodness, the last 2 years of the pandemic, business losses, so on and so forth. Do we want to conserve our monies? Do we want to look after our children? Do we want to give them the money instead to settle the, to give them a little bit of a push?
It's a great point you make, because it's the value system has changed so profoundly in the last 2 years that people are conscious of the optics, that rather accept the fact that it's a smaller guest list, still do it richly with fewer people, and then allow the kids to also have a down payment for a new home on top of that. So it's an interesting mix itself. And I know that we have some questions that are coming through and beeping through from our audience across the different platforms. Shall we switch to that, sir?
Absolutely. Grace, give us our first question, please.
Our first question comes from Jennifer, and she would like to know, now that India is open for business, what changes are you anticipating and preparing for?
So we've been working on this for quite a while now. Most of our hotels, let's start from the airport. From the time you arrive, there's a new mechanism for you to come through customs and immigration, basically trying to be socially distant. Then once you get out of the airport, similarly, your meet and greet service, well, I can speak for people who are being met by the trade, for Abercrombie and Kent or my competitors. We ensure that all the people, the reps who meet the guests on arrival, are double vaccinated. Our cars are sanitized and hygienically equipped with all the equipment, which is sanitizers and masks. Currently, masks still remain the hour of the day in India. It's day one today. Let's see what happens in a month from now. Then, when you check into hotels, it is all going to be seamless. So, if you're traveling through Abercrombie and Kent or one of my competitors, your information is already captured in advance. So the hotel has the information. So the check-in is very smooth. You don't have to go into the front desk. You don't have to sign any forms. If you've given your credit card, they'll already put that on the list. And when you're leaving, all you have to do is call the front desk and say you're checking out. Or, of course, when you're being taken out by a representative of our company, they do all the paperwork for you and you just leave. So at every touch point, it is similar, where we are very well aware of what we've been through with the pandemic. Similarly, our monuments are also allowing for queuing and giving people space once you are getting into the monument. Of course, once you're in the monument, you have to make sure you have your mask on and so on and so forth. I don't know, I hope I've answered the question.
But I think it's an important one, because VIKRAM, A&K guides have always been exceptional, and having again experienced them directly in taking care of the guests and being that bubble that carries them through. They're not changing that. They're just adopting the protocols within that bubble so that it's all taken care of. And I think that's an important element, that people are now turning more to tour groups for the peace of mind of knowing the things I might not know I need to take care of, regulations, policies, protocols. Someone's got that, and they've got our backs covered on it. So
absolutely.
Great. Grace, let's take another question.
Our next question is, what is the most challenging part of a destination wedding aside from pushy brides?
My God, there's so many challenges of a destination wedding. So the moment the couples select a destination, then they have to make sure that they have the required hotel of their choice booked and confirmed. Given that that's done, then they have to ensure they have the space for where they want to stage the wedding booked and confirmed. Then comes the guest list. Now, how do you bring down your guest list to people you would like to invite and have present, and so on and so forth? Then comes the entertainment, because you have to fly in the entertainment. In most destinations, the entertainers come from different parts of India or overseas, so that logistics has to be taken care of. Then comes the part of a destination wedding runs into 3, 4, 5 days. Then you have to get into the menu planning to make sure you don't repeat a meal, what people have eaten on day 1 and day 3. And the most difficult part on all this, along with, of course, the given is their flights, their flight availability, or you can drive, and so on and so forth. But the most difficult part of this is getting your guests to confirm RSVP, get them to book their international or domestic flights, and so on and so forth. That's a big challenge. Then, of course, the wedding clothes, and the list is endless on a destination wedding. Actually, honestly, it's a big project to try and put together a destination wedding, but
And
people do it.
Come to you as the buffer of that, of absorbing all of the logistics, especially as things start moving with I always think that's what's underestimated is the nerve system that is required for people coordinating destination weddings, because it just gets more and more intense as the day gets near. So.
I think we have time for one more.
Sorry.
I was going to say we can take one more question. Grace?
Yes, we have a question from Olaf, who wants to know, what is the most incredible wedding that A&K has staged in India? Can you give us some details?
There's so many of them. I wish I could give you one, but I would say Udaipur as a city, and bringing in the entire procession on boats into an island that was created for so we have 2 parts where the boy normally comes in a barat in a Punjabi or most Indian weddings. So the procession, all the boys' members, family, friends, etc., came on boats that looked very similar. So we had to get boats organized on the lake. Similarly, they wanted to have an elephant to actually get to the point where the boy would get onto the boats. So arranging an elephant in good old days. Nowadays, elephants are scarce, especially for weddings. But that whole logistics of putting together where the elephant will come, they'll get off the elephant, they get onto the boats, building platforms, and then having them arrive at the lovely island called Jagmandir, and how the girl would actually meet them at the area where there'd be the wedding celebrations to start taking place. It was quite a Herculean task. So Udaipur is probably one of the most challenging places, but it's absolutely outstanding.
Well, it's interesting. It sounds as if that for all those that are watching all of this A&K wedding magic come to life, it either inspires them to contact you to make the wedding happen, or it inspires them to elope. It's one of the two, because the passion is just, it can be just so magnificent, but it is quite overwhelming at times, especially for the direct families involved. It must be magic, though, just seeing it all happen. And seeing it happen again with 2 years of relative quiet.
If it's okay, I have another short question for you. It's a little embarrassing to ask, but if you were helping to plan Anita's wedding, what would be one amazing thing you would absolutely think Anita would have to have at her wedding because she deserves the very, very best?
Just one thing
Just one thing. She only deserves one thing. It has to be excellent, but only one thing she gets.
I think end of the day, it is cuisine. You have to have high quality cuisine. Otherwise your guests, because especially if you're doing a destination wedding, cuisine plays a very important role, and because people, end of the day, want to sit down to a nice meal after you go through the fun and frolic, the sangeets, the barat. So food is very important. And most people fly top chefs down and their teams to ensure that they're able to execute that one thing, which is top cuisine and the delivery. And then, of course, the delivery mechanism, is also how you dress the table, how you execute the sit-down dinner for, we've done it for 350, a sit-down silver service dinner for 350 people. So you have your back kitchens, and then you have everything that goes along with it, et cetera, et cetera. Now, we didn't touch upon, of course, it's the Valentines and young couples. A lot of people come
And
to
old
India.
couples.
Yeah, and older couples, of course. And a lot of people come to India to re-say their vows. And we do very many international weddings where a couple who've been married 50 years or 40 years, and they want to come back and stage another wedding with their friends and family. And we've done this at the beautiful palace hotels like the Rambagh Palace in Jaipur. We've done it in Agra, because the Agra is a symbol of love at the Taj Mahal, overlooking the Taj Mahal. So that's another segment that is big for India, where people come to re-say their vows, 30, 40, 50 years of togetherness.
Great. I think it's a great plan. Professor, you go first. You let me know what the choice of menu will be. And then I know that Al's watching this, so I think he's breaking into a cold sweat.
Well, who do you think texted me that question while we were on the air? I mean, I don't want to say who did it, but yeah, have your suspicions.
Well,
I think I got
Al and Anita, it's been a long time since you've come back. And of course, Demian, you need to come visit us, and you'll understand what I'm talking about.
Sure.
Exactly.
All right. Well,
huge love and thanks from all of us, and I'll hand it over to Professor to close off as well. But thank you for being a part of this. I'm a huge fan, and please give Meetha my love, and I hope you have a lovely Valentine's evening together. Professor, over to you.
Just two of my favorite things of this show have been meeting new people and learning new things, and I got to do both today. So thank you very much, VIKRAM, for your time and for sharing a perspective on a sector of the industry that I don't know much about. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right.
Glad to be part of it.
So, hey, I wanted to say that my flowers, your flowers, need a little bit of attention. I think they need a little bit more water and light. So just when you get a chance, just put a little water into those flowers. Grace, is it time, Grace? Total knockout. Grace, what is Anita going to, what debate is Anita going to try to win today?
Well, I think this debate is out of this world. It is. Should we be promoting space travel when we have such issues around sustainable travel here on Earth? Anita, take it away.
Interesting one. And I appreciate it's going to be very easy, Professor, to say whether it's Virgin Galactica with Sir Richard Branson or Blue Origin with Jeff Bezos or SpaceX with Elon Musk, that it's indulgent. It's all about ego. It's all about just keeping things beyond what you'd expect and being at the forefront of the new world of travel. It's actually not about that. It's about innovation. And all three of these people, as private individuals, are encouraged by governments to explore space tourism, not because of the tourism, but the fact that they can actually avoid and completely cut around all of the barriers that governments who usually manage space travel are caught by, whether it's bureaucracy and decision-making, budgets, whatever it might be. So space tourism is not about tourism in space. It's how it allows us to now accelerate so much innovation, whether it's communications, safety, sustainability in terms of carbon emissions. There's massive job creation that comes from it. All of this innovation is being leveraged for down here on Earth. In addition, it also helps people question, why do we need to go into space? Why don't we appreciate where we are and get them to relook being on terra firma and exploring the planet that we already have? So space tourism is actually not about space. It's about getting people excited about travel and getting people excited about space innovation and how it can protect and strengthen lives here and the way we're all evolving in the future. So keeping it grounded.
Look, I got no problem with innovation. I've got a couple of concerns because the question was about, should we be exploring space tourism when we really have these pressing needs for sustainable and responsible tourism on Earth? How do I tell my students or my kids that, you know, the weekend jaunt to Prague is not environmentally responsible, even though it's going to feed some people in Prague and help industries out because of the emissions? But it's okay for billionaires to consume more than 100 times the carbon footprint for a long haul flight full of 500 people so they can go up into space for 15 minutes. No, you, the traveling public, have to be responsible, but the billionaires don't have to be. That's a tough sell for me, especially at this time when we're trying to get people to be more responsible here on Earth. The amount of soot, they say, right, is even worse. But another point was, right now it's okay. There's a couple of flights, one flight every couple of months. It's nice. It's something interesting. When you're going to plan 400 flights a year and 1,000 space flights, they say, would warm the Atlantic by nearly 1 degree Celsius, and Galactic wants to have 400 flights a year. Do they have the right to emit so much pollution and damage the Earth in the name of, if you want, innovation, but really in the name of corporate profits at this point? Because little research has been shown that any of this is really going to advance much. We've already had the technology to have suborbital flights for 30 years now, 40 years already. So really, what's it contributing? So I think you got to weigh the costs and benefits. And sure, I agree. You and the people you've mentioned, Elon Musk, you all have the right to go into space. You can have a really nice selfie for your Instagram account. But I just don't think it's fair to the rest of us.
Interesting argument. Quick rebuttal, purely from the point of view of that's thinking that all things are equal now. We've been talking on this program about net zero, the commitment from the industry to make sure that carbon emissions are dealt with. These are the technologies that are going to enable us to step change sustainable travel here on Earth, not just into space.
Okay. Well, I'm going to wish you a bon voyage on your trip with Jeff and Elon. Grace, put me out of my misery. And because it's Valentine's Day, take it away, Grace.
Okay, it is time to choose your winner. Do you agree with Anita that it's not about indulgence and ego, it's actually about innovation? And space tourism is not about tourism in space, it's about getting people excited about travel, job creation, and these are the technologies that are going to help advance sustainable travel here on Earth. Or do you agree with Demian that you've got no problem with innovation, but that's not actually answering the question? How is it okay for billionaires to have 100 times carbon footprint compared to a long-haul flight for 15 minutes of space? And 400 flights a year they're expecting, and 1,000 space flights will increase the temperature of the oceans by 1 degree.
And can I just say, it's Valentine's, so please, everybody, vote for Anita. My gift to you, Anita, this year, I need you to have a win here.
I think we need to vote for Grace, quite honestly.
I don't even know why we debate. We should just give her our notes and she can just do that. Oh, I tried. I pushed people to vote for you.
All right.
Try to throw it your way. All right. You know, I'm going to give you, like they do in American football, I'm going to give you some points next time. It'll be like me versus you, but you get an additional 2 bonus points. And that maybe will even things out.
I shall remain silent. Excellent. And so as we look towards the close of this episode, with huge thanks to our Infinite partners and to VIKRAM for joining us as our executive in residence, we look forward to 2 weeks' time, and it's going to be a huge adventure. We come back on February the 28th, so please, between now and then, back in the bottom left corner, you can see it, rise-weekly.com. You can go and see all of our episodes from the last almost 2 years. So thank you very much for checking back on everything we've done the last 2 years as we build up to February 28th. It's going to be all about adventure is out there. We have Jerry Mabena, a loved colleague and friend and board member, who's coming in and talking about building incredible adventure-based offerings, even during COVID times, and launching those. And Shannon Stoll, the CEO of ATTA, the Adventure Travel Trade Association. Really interesting to see that as people start going back out into the world, they're looking at going in different places and having different experiences. These two are the ones we need to speak to on the 28th. So until then, before I hand it over to Professor Hodari, thank you for joining us for RISE. We absolutely love our ability to make this happen for you. We're incredibly grateful for all of you who have joined us from around the world on our Rise Weekly platform, Facebook Live, LinkedIn Live, and YouTube Live. Thank you for continuing to be part of the conversation. From my side, from South Africa, and wherever we are in the world, stay safe, stay strong, stay hopeful, keep your hands clean, and stay with RISE. Professor, over to you.
I don't know what I can possibly say after that, like closing. Hey, it was a lot of fun today. Hopefully you enjoyed the show. I do agree the next one is going to be really interesting. Adventure travel, probably one of the hotter topics going on amongst industry people right now. And to all my students, I will see you in class next week. And to my daughters, happy Valentine's Day. And to my wife, a very happy Valentine's Day.
Take care, everyone.